couldn't come close to him in the hotel, so I told him, let's come take picture. And once he came, I dropped him, and I had to do it because I'm not somebody I'm not Alex Perez, I'm not other guys who somebody can bully me. I come from the roof background, like my life was tough, and I give no shit to anyone to bully me, you know.
Dagestan. Another one of your sons made it to the UFC and got embroiled in controversies. Yeah, that's how this video starts, guys. No buffer, straight to the jugular. Because that's exactly how Muhammad Mokaev rose to the top. 1 minute, he was fleeing the terror of his motherland, and the next, he was on top of the world. We blinked, and it was there like we hadn't been paying attention all along. Today, we explore the life and the times of the Punisher, his rise to the top, and how he became MMA's public enemy #1. Much like the last UFC star we discussed, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Muhammad Mokaev was also born in Dagestan, a small republic in Russia. His motherland has been an emerging hotbed of MMA talents recently, especially as Russia thrives in combat sports like wrestling and judo. Much like the last UFC star we discussed, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Muhammad Mokaev was also born in Dagestan, a small republic in Russia. His motherland has been an emerging hotbed of MMA talents recently, especially as Russia thrives in combat sports like wrestling and judo. Mokaev fled Dagestan at a young age, moving to England where he would settle down and have an education. It was during this process that the Dagestani Brit would come to fall in love with combat sports. As a Muslim immigrant living in the UK, Mokaev had to deal with a lot of provocative behaviours from his peers. The fact that he couldn't speak English for a while didn't help either. However, as much as youthful exuberance pushed the teenage Mokaev to get into altercations, he knew that doing so came at a significant personal cost, losing his and his family's legal status. So instead, he swallowed the abuse and took to sports as an avenue for venting his frustrations and channeling his anger into something more constructive. Mokaev was only 12 when he showed up at the refugee centre in Liverpool with his father. His mother died shortly before they fled Dagestan, and the family arrived in the UK with nothing but a few clothes, zero money, and little to no understanding of the local language. Imagine a Muslim Dagestani running into a Scouser accent after leaving Russia. Who can blame the boy for wanting to throw hands? After a month in the refugee camp, Mokaev and his father were relocated to Wigan where they took roots. Life wasn't great, of course. A teen Mokaev lived on £5 per day and had the same pair of clothes to get by, which included a jumper, body warmer and a pair of jeans. When he began attending the local deanery high school, Mokaev showed up with this outfit on non-uniform days, much to the amusement of his peers who came in the best fits. In typical teenage fashion, the bullying began. Mokaev was desperate to learn English and it took a while, but he managed. It was a daunting change, but the Dagestani was determined to turn things around. After a great spell in high school, he proceeded to St. John Rigby College. The more Mokaev lived in Wigan, the more he fell in love with the borough and its sporting history. Coupled with his need for an outlet, and he soon found himself playing football or soccer at Stadium Way. When Mokaev wasn't playing, he enjoyed watching matches and even caught the FA Cup upset when Wigan outplayed Manchester City in 2018. Although football was enjoyable, Mokaev fell in love with wrestling instead. He'd first been introduced to the sport in Dagestan much like the other kids there. He even competed in several freestyle wrestling competitions in his home country. However, it wasn't until living in the UK that he developed a passion for wrestling. Noting his change in priorities, Mokaev swapped Stadium Way for the Manchester Wrestling Club. This brought him a major upturn in fortunes as he was crowned a British champion and English national champion twice in a couple of years. But even that is putting it lightly. Winning all these championships in England should have paved the way for Mokaev to move on to bigger, better things in more established circuits around Europe. However, his refugee status meant he couldn't travel or participate in these competitions. so he had to stay back and watch opponents he dominated in local championships go on to live his dream abroad. Rather than sinking into despair, Mokaev decided to broaden his skills to ensure his status could no longer hold him back. Enter Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. With another combat sport under his belt, Mokaev was now a mixed martial artist. Despite his young age, the Dagestani was quite an experienced fighter with an unblemished record as proof. Yet, he was in no hurry to turn pro. He wanted his MMA career to be built on resounding success, so he took his time to build an incredible 23-0 resume on the amateur circuit, going through every opponent like hot knife through butter. To further prove that he wasn't just coding on luck, he competed in the IMMAF format, which pits the best amateur fighters globally with one another. He emerged as the #1 ranked pound-for-pound amateur on the IMMAF roster. As Mokaev grew and his records reflected how much of a beast he was in the octagon, many were watching. However, few of his admirers were as big or influential as Sheikh Khalid, the fifth son of the Bahrain royal family, who was also a keen MMA fan and had his own MMA promotion called Brave CF formed in 2016. Sheikh Khalid had been following Mokaev since his amateur career and was desperate to sign the Dagestani. So when Mokaev wanted to compete in the IMMAF in Bahrain in 2018, but could not travel due to documentation troubles, the Sheikh came through, helping to ease the way. So when Mokaev was finally satisfied with his amateur records and wanted to go pro, he chose to sign with Brave CF out of loyalty to the Sheikh, who had been a helpful guide since they first met. Even though Mokaev was still a teenager when he penned his first contract, Sheikh Khalid had faith that the young Mokaev would one day dominate the biggest MMA stages. By August of 2020, roughly 5 months after his final amateur bout, Mokaev debuted for Brave CF as a pro. His first opponent was Swede Glenn McVie at Brave CF 37. The Punisher hit the ground running, winning by unanimous decision to begin his pro career with a resounding victory. His next 3 fights were more of the same and included a submission over Jamie Kelly and 2 TKOs over Hayden Sheriff and Dave Jones. Mokaev's next bout was his first in his current weight class. He battled it out against Abdul Hussein in a match that has been described as non-stop scrambling. In the end, the Punisher's wrestling skills were far better, and he won via unanimous decision. This marked the end of his winning streak, as his next match involved an illegal groin strike that took his opponent, Ibrahim Nazruzov, out of the fight. The match was declared a no contest. Fast forward to September of 2021, and Mokaev's time with the Bahraini Prince came to an end. The Dagestani faced off against Blaine O'Driscoll and got the Irishman to tap out in the second round. His professional record was now 6-0 with 1 no contest within a little over a year turning pro. His phone was ringing off the hook. It was time to bring the Dagestani Frank Castle to America. Mokaev could not have wished for a better UFC debut, as he got to fight at UFC Fight Night in London, England in March of 2022. His opponent was the battle-tested Cody Durden, and it looked like the bout could go either way. But in typical Mokaev fashion, he had the American tapping out in less than a minute. This landslide victory earned Mokaev a Performance of the Night bonus, which was a wonderful start to his campaign under Dana White's promotion. The Dagestani continued to dispatch other opponents sent his way, including Charles Johnson, who he defeated by unanimous decision. Mokaev's final fight in his debut season was against Malcolm Gordon. The Punisher ended the match much like his first, catching Gordon in an armbar and forcing the Canadian to tap out in 34 seconds. Over time, Mokaev fought even tougher opponents like Jafel Filio, who had the Dagestani in a big knee bar submission, which ended up rupturing Mokaev's MCL partially. Despite his injury, Mokaev still managed to get Jafel Filio to bow out with a submission in the final round. By the end of the fight, he became inactive to recover from his injury. His professional record was now 10-0 with chance for doubt. Early in his career, the Dagestani wanted to help kids with his platform the same way combat sports changed his life. Coupled with his winning streak and dedication to success, Mokaev seemed like a focused MMA fighter who conducted his business with clinical precision and had lofty goals. However, things have since unraveled, painting the Punisher as anything but noble. Much like Khabib Nurmagomedov, who is frequently compared to, Mokaev also had a rivalry with another UFC fighter that soon exceeded the bounds of the octagon. The Punisher may not have had Conor McGregor as a thorn in his backside, but Manel Kape more or less filled that role perfectly. In fact, similar to the Nurmagomedov-McGregor backstage and bus brawl, Kape and Mokaev had impromptu punch-ons before the brink of their match together at UFC 304. Another UFC fighter witnessed the entire incident and reported that it was Kape who initiated the brawl after headbutting Mokaev and leaving a noticeable scar. However, this isn't unexpected, given that the two had been trading words on social media for weeks. While the press release that shook the industry, to quote him verbatim, "He is not under contract anymore. I think the PFL is going to get a great undefeated guy. Good luck to him." After White's statement, many were confused. Some believed that the Dagestani's wrestling-heavy style, which wasn't very appealing to fans, was to blame. However, as more news on the situation comes to light, thanks to MMA reporter Ben Davis, we now know that White wasn't just name-dropping the PFL, the UFC's biggest rival promotion, for the hell of it. So it turns out that Mokaev and his team had been negotiating with the PFL in hopes of securing a contract which they can leverage for a better deal with the UFC. Unfortunately, the UFC did not bite. Mokaev lost on both fronts when PFL President Ray Sefo revealed in an interview at the PFL playoffs that his promotion had no intentions of signing the Dagestani because he'd learned that he is, quote-unquote, a pain in the ass to deal with. With the whole situation blowing up in his face, Mokaev returns, tail between his legs, apologizing and begging for Dana White to resign him, and even offers to fight for free. At only 23 years of age and with less than 3 years in the UFC, Muhammad Mokaev seems to have washed out the biggest stage through no fault but his own. How would his career pan out going forward? We can only watch and see.